Can a book help you win the lottery? One of the guests on this show, she appeared anonymously and she won 348,000 jackpot, and she swears by your book. If it's okay with you, I'd like to play a real quick clip.
I found this lady, she's amazing. Her name is Pam Grout, and she has this book I highly recommend. Well, Pam actually teaches you how to harness your energy powers and show you how to manipulate the world around you with it.
Wow, I'm so honored to hear that. You know, every day I send gratitude, and I tell you what, that's going to go on my list for tomorrow. There's so many avenues for the universe to get through to us. Dreams are a good one. Signs, synchronicity, there's so many different ways. The universe is endlessly loving and endlessly creative. I believe anything is possible. I mean, literally anything.
Welcome to Lottery Dreams and Fortune. So I am so excited to be joined here today with Pam Grout. Unbelievably excited. She's the author of 20 books. She's a New York Times #1 bestseller. Some of her books include E Squared, 9 Do-It-Yourself Energy Experiments to Prove Your Thoughts Create Your Reality, E Cubed, Thank and Grow Rich, The Course in Miracles Experiment, and the list just goes on and on. But Pam, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. I'm excited to be talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking time. I really appreciate it. So I'm familiar with your work. For people that are not, that might not yet be familiar, they haven't read your books yet, how would you describe what you do?
Well, usually when people ask what I write about, I usually say half of my books are travel books. You know, I have done 3 books for National Geographic, and then I've done some other travel books. And then half of them are inspiration. The ones I'm known for, I guess, would be the inspirational self-help, live your best life kind of books. So the ones that, you know, soared to the top of the charts and have been translated into 40 some languages, those are the kind of the self-helpy type books. I don't really like that category so much, self-help, because it's like, I don't know, half of our search and thinking we need to be helped is part of the problem, but it is a category, a genre that the publishing industry tends to use. So yes, but yeah, I like to share, you know, possibility and miracles, and encourage people to also look for those things.
And we recently had one of the guests on this show because we interview all kinds of people that are inspiring, including authors like yourself, but also some lottery winners. And one person that recently appeared, she appeared anonymously, but Ashley was the pseudonym, the name that we used, but she appeared anonymously, and she won 348,000 jackpot in Arizona from a Fantasy 5 prize. And she swears by your book, by your E Squared. She's read a few of your books, but that's one of them that she highly recommended. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to play a real quick clip from that interview too.
Oh, I love it. Yeah,
Okay,
please do.
okay,
That
great.
sounds fun.
Okay, thank you.
When I started that journey, I found this lady, she's amazing. Her name is Pam Grout, and she has this book. I highly recommend people start with this book, or if they're already on a manifestation journey and haven't yet, to go get this book, because it's one thing to hear about the law of attraction and thinking you know how to do it, but at the same time you're like, am I doing it? Am I doing it right? Well, Pam actually teaches you how to harness your energy powers and show you how to manipulate the world around you with it. And so the name of the book is E Squared, 9 Experiments to Prove that You Create Your Own Reality. And inside that book, she has 9 experiments, and some of them are as simple as manifesting a certain car into your life, in your basically activating your reticular activating system, which is known as RAS. It's a really cool book that teaches you how to harness that energy and that power within you to actually use in real life. And I think that book was the most instrumental book of my path. And I feel like it would be for so many others. Like if I'm in, I've done this a couple times, where I'm in Barnes and Noble and I'm in the self-help section or the self-actualization section, and there's another person there, I always go, have you read this book? And then if they're like, no, I go and buy it for them and I hand it and put it in their hands. And I'm like, this is for you. Like, this will change your life.
Wow, I'm so honored to hear that. Every day I send gratitudes to one of my possibility posses, things that really cool things that happened from the day before. And I tell you what, that's going to go on my list for tomorrow because that was a great story to hear. So thank you, whoever you are. Ashley, I guess, was the pseudonym. But anyway, how fun to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad that we were able to play that for you.
Well, one of the great things, about the work that I do or the books that I write about, I get so many emails from people, and they usually start with something like, you are never going to believe this. So this would kind of fall into one of those, you are never going to believe this moments. And I always love hearing those. And I like sharing those stories sometimes on my blog because I think we all need to hear this. Because if we're open to these possibilities, then these kind of things are going to happen more often. If we put a big wall down and said, nah, that can't happen, magic and miracles don't happen, well, then that's what we're going to get. So we do need to be open to it. So I think the more we share these kind of conversations, the better for all of us, because then it kind of helps dispel our disbelief or those old paradigms that we learn growing up in our culture. So thank you for sharing that with me. You mentioned, I guess, when you first contacted me about the lottery story. So maybe that's how you first heard about me. But anyway, that's a fun story and thanks. So yeah, love it.
Ah, no, thank you so much. And did you ever imagine when you were writing that book or any of your books that it could be cited as a tool for some people to help win the lottery? Or
I've had people tell me stories a little bit like this before. And one of the things I like to say, yes, you can certainly, that's one of the ways that wealth can be delivered to you is through the lottery. But when we say, I specifically want to win the lottery, I mean, that's not a bad intention, I suppose. But I like to be open to the universe to whatever way it wants to deliver exciting things. You know what I mean? I don't want to handcuff it to say, okay, this is my one avenue that I'm going to allow in to win, $300,000. I mean, there's many, many ways. There's thousands, infinite number of ways you can find wealth, $300,000, whatever. So that's what I tend to think mostly when people would, relate something about the lottery, but it's certainly one of the many. So, hey, why not? So yeah, I think that's cool that people would make that intention.
yeah, and have you had any other stories? Well, I'm sure that you have of people that have stories of coming across sudden wealth or a prize or getting a promotion or something that they like that where they attribute that material instant wealth to.
Well, my story's kind of fun. When I wrote E Squared, I originally had written it as under another title. It was published and everything. But when it came out, with Hay House, it came out in January of 2013. And on New Year's Eve of that year, I was in Savannah, Georgia, visiting my sister. And so for New Year's Eve, we were out watching the fireworks, and I took a big stick, and on the beach down there, I made the intention. I said, E Squared will become an international bestseller or something to that effect that I wrote with a big stick on the beach. And then, of course, the waves come in and take it out into the world. And indeed, that happened. I mean, it didn't happen like the next day, but it happened the next year. I mean, it did happen during that year. And again, I didn't specify, yes, but I did say international bestseller. So that, I guess, was the specific thing that I was intending to manifest. But it certainly worked for me. I mean, I watched it climb up the charts throughout the year, and it was all by word of mouth. It was just like people love this. They love watching the YouTubes with people in those rods that that Ashley was talking about. Yeah, it just kind of grew of its own momentum or its own because of my intention out there in the universe. So yeah.
And it's extremely successful and highly successful and very popular. And since this interview with Ashley came out, there have been all kinds of comments on the channel and people that really started reading and doing the experiments in E Squared that had fantastic results. For people that aren't yet familiar, haven't yet read your book, which experiment or experiments would you recommend that someone start with?
Oh gosh. Well, the first one is the dude abides, and it's kind of written in a funny manner. I guess the point being that there is this force in the universe that wants to interact with us, bless us, and guide us. That's the number one thing. Once you believe that, once you're open to that, then all kinds of magical things can happen. And that would be the very first experiment in E squared. So, that's a good one to start with. The nice thing about the book is that it's set up like real specifically, like you give it 48 hours for most of the experiments, and you literally, you set up a hypothesis, you set up an intention, and then you literally record your results. So it's kind of a fun scientific experiment that people can do. And I think that's why it hit such a chord, because these principles have been out there forever. I mean, even the Bible says, seek and you shall find, ask and it shall be given unto you, whatever it says in the Bible. So this has been out there for a long time, but I think E squared just hit a chord because don't listen to this. Don't take my word for it. Go out and give it a try. Experiment with this. See, see if it works for you. And that's the main thing. Once you see it with your own two eyes, then you become a little more open to it. It's all about being open to these things. It's always there. We're always blessed. But we don't see it because we're totally invested. We've collapsed the wave of a whole other story, problem state, which is the state most of us tend to live in. But when you get into possibility state, which is what I think E squared encourages us to do, then you start seeing all kinds of synchronicities, miracle signs. I mean, they never end, once you open your mind to them.
How do you open your mind to that sort of thing?
Well, that's what I think is really unique about E squared, is that it is set up a little bit like a science experiment. I mean, it could not work. There's that possibility. And certainly I've gotten emails from people who said it didn't work for them. You see it for yourself. You actually do the experiment, you set the deadline, you test a hypothesis. So I think this book is pretty good for people like that. And they're just real simple. It's not the big giant things, but it is just showing you that by setting intentions, the universe will interact with you. You get on a particular frequency, and then you manifest from that particular frequency. And again, the more open you are to possibility and miracles and beautiful things, then more of those kind of things come rushing in.
Yes. And one of the experiments has to do with the reticular activating system.
Oh, the reticular activating system. Oh, well,
Yes.
that's just a little gumdrop size thing in the back of your brain that actually regulates what you allow into your consciousness. It kind of sends the things you think are important into your awareness, into your consciousness, and then it just blocks out everything else. So the RAS, reticular activating system, is always working for us, and it does depend on, again, what we're open to, what our beliefs and our thoughts allow in. I mean, there's so much data out there in the world. There's so much happening all the time that literally we can't process it all. So we start choosing which ones we want. And we tend to pick up what our family taught us, what our culture teaches us. And then literally miracles could happen and you can't even see it. I told a story, and I don't think this was in E squared because I think it hadn't happened yet, but about a friend of mine who was in one of my possibility posses. She was at the airport. There was somebody that walked up that had like all these bags, was waiting for the bus to come around so she could get, back to her car where she'd left it before she caught her flight. And my friend was standing right there, and the bus just kept circling, and this woman literally could not see it. She's sitting there going, "Where is that damn bus?" I mean, she was all upset. And it was right there, but she wasn't able to see it because she was so heavily invested in this idea that life wasn't working out for her. So anyway.
How do you open yourself up to see something that you wish to see that might not be in your life?
Well, you just literally make that decision. I think I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, which is a spiritual program, kind of a psychological spiritual program. And I've been doing it for years and years. And I think yesterday's lesson, or it might have been the day before, I'm not sure, but it was something like heaven. It kind of uses weird terminology, but heaven is the choice I must make. I must decide that I'm going to be open to miracles happening. I'm going to be open to my intentions coming true. because we're not taught to do that. We are taught that life sucks and then you die. I mean, that is kind of the paradigm that we're taught. Our parents think it's their duty to teach us, oh, you got to be safe, you got to protect yourself, you're separate, the world's scarce. I mean, these are the things that we're taught. And so that's what our RAS, to use that analogy, is sending off to our awareness of what we're seeing. So it's really about making a decision to start looking for these things, and that's basically what E-squared does. It encourages us to look for other things. There's 9 experiments. The first book I wrote, this was kind of a launch pad, had 10 experiments. This one has 9. But people see these amazing things happening, and it makes their belief system more open to it.
How much would you say that faith plays into that, or belief? Your belief. I mean, you just mentioned the word belief, but how much is it?
Belief, I say. Faith sort of indicates that you have faith, but I mean, they could be synonyms, I suppose. But if you have the belief or you have the faith that the miracles, got your back, or that the universe has your back, then you're going to see more evidence of that if you have that belief or you have that faith, if you want to call it that.
And some people, at least that we meet on this show and in life in general, tend to be luckier people than other people. Someone wins all these prizes, or someone's won the lottery, or they're just a lucky person. They have that aura, that history within themselves. Do you think that RAS, or belief in faith, can play a role into things like getting lucky breaks that seem like they could just be happenstance?
Well, I tell you, there's a professor in England who did a study on luck. He literally did a scientific experiment. And what he discovered, was that people who sort of saw themselves as lucky or pictured themselves as lucky, I've always thought I was a lucky person, but they tend to be more lucky. And that goes back to, that's your belief. If a lot of people say, oh, things always happen to me. If it's not one thing, it's 1,000 others. I had a friend that used to say that. And indeed, those kind of things happen to her. We kind of choose how we're going to live our life. And choosing to feel lucky, to be lucky, is something we can choose. I mean, we can, we have, there's neuroplasticity in our brain. And so even though that RAS is sending negative messages and negative things going through, that can be changed. I mean, that's maybe one of the first steps, is like, oh, okay, I could change this, that it is possible to make a change, from the way things are coming out for me. So yeah, being open to that. It's all about opening up. It's about chiseling away all the beliefs, all the blocks, all the things that get in our way. I mean, that letting go of stuff is just the most important thing, because it's the truth of the world. That's why letting go of all the blocks, then you get to the truth of the world, because the world, life, magic is happening. It's truly there all the time. We are truly happy, but we often have these other stories going on that are put a big layer or orange cones all around, letting all the magic come through. So, and that is the way most people tend to live. They focus on all the stuff that's going wrong and why me, why me. So it's a matter of changing, how you look at the world.
Yeah, that makes complete sense with your perception and how you perceive it. And do you have any tips or advice on someone that is really having trouble doing that?
I'm not one that gives a lot of advice. I like to share miracle stories. I feel like we all have to kind of learn it for ourselves. I think by doing the experiments, again, people can be so shut down that they won't even allow the experiments to work for them. But if you have just a little bit of willingness, one thing the Course in Miracles says, you don't need to have the faith of, well, I don't know, an elephant. You just a tiny little bit, just a little bit of willingness. So that's all I ask for people, is just give it a try, just a tiny toe of willingness to stick your foot into that this could be possible, that magic could be possible. And that's all that it takes. The universe will do the rest. All we need is a little bit of faith.
And what do you think is the most powerful experiment out of your books that people should absolutely try, that could just be extremely life-changing?
Oh gosh. Well, I think all of them are powerful. I like all of them, actually. One of the things that's real easy or a good starting point to change, I wrote a book called Thank and Grow Rich. It's a takeoff, obviously, on Think and Grow Rich. And if you just start looking for things to be grateful for, that will change your frequency and that will change what you allow into your field of awareness. So I would say, like I said, I have a little possibility posse, and every morning I send gratitudes from things that had happened from the day before. So I'm always out looking for things to be grateful for. But if you really, I mean, you can take a whole sheet of paper and just write down all the things that you're grateful for. And it's amazing how many things are out there that you just overlook. I mean, the sun came up this morning, your heart is beating, and you don't have to do anything. You keep breathing, you don't have to do anything. I mean, life is supporting us. And so when we stop and appreciate that it's supporting us and start noticing all the ways life is working out for us instead of moaning about I need this or I need that and this sucks, whatever. So once you just start turning your focus more to all the things there are to be thankful for, that can change everything.
Do you know why it changes everything? Because you're not alone, and so many people that teach manifestation and swear by the
Oh,
power of
about being
gratitude.
grateful.
Yeah, why
Well,
is
it
it so?
changes your frequency. If you're out there looking for things to be grateful for, you find there's so many. And it just makes you a happier person. I mean, it's just like, wow, all this stuff was here and I hadn't even noticed. So it's just the real simple lever that can change, if you start looking for things to be grateful for and saying thank you. Hey, first thing I do before I ever get out of bed is just I say something amazingly awesome is going to happen to me today, and I fully expect that it will. And I just say thank you for my the cool breeze, the birds singing. I mean, it's different all the time, but there's always something really wonderful to be grateful for.
With frequency, so how does that work? Because, quantum physicists will say that there are all kinds of different dimensions, an infinite number of possibilities. But when you say frequency, and we're changing our frequency, what do you mean?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, so much is going on out there and you can only take in so much. So it's just really changing like a frequency. If you think of it as multidimensional vibrating waves, but if you think of it just as a chart, just to make it simple, like a one dimensional, or I guess it'd be two-dimensional chart, then it's like literally as your frequency goes up and you're more open to miracles, and you start saying thank you for more things, then you go up. And so then, good things will start coming in. You'll start seeing more of that, the truth of the world. It's like really seeing the truth. It's not like you have to do anything. You just have to open your mind and chip away all the stuff that doesn't show you the world you want to see.
And the truth of the world, was that more because you mentioned that you're are a student of the Course in Miracles, and you've actually written a workbook, book about it that I want to ask about in a little bit. But the truth of the world, is that more having to do with love and positive energy, or that's
Well,
my
that's how
understanding?
I see the world, and that to me is the truth of the world. That love is the highest frequency. It is the only real frequency. But because we have such powerful minds, we can certainly create other good things other than that don't look like love. But that is the bottom line truth.
Do you believe that the universe can speak to people through dreams and intuition, inner nudges, that sort of thing, when you have a gut feeling and it turns out to be right, with a lottery win or anything else? Because that happened to me, and it's happened to some people I've met and interviewed, where you dream about things and then it happens in real life. What's your take on that sort of thing?
Like the reason I don't just want to say I'm going to win, get money through the lottery. I don't. There's so many avenues for the universe to get through to us. Dreams are a good one. Signs, synchronicity. There's so many different ways. The universe is endlessly loving and endlessly creative. Yes, certainly things come in through dreams. I've had dreams and then that thing happened the next day. I mean, I think the universe is always speaking to us. So that's just one of the many, many avenues where the universe can, speak to us and give us signs and ideas.
How do you tell the difference between intuition signs and synchronicities versus wishful thinking?
I'm not sure. I don't know that I'm an expert on that. When I think about it, some people might call it wishful thinking, but that's just an idea or maybe a negative spin on things. So, what's wrong with wishful thinking? I mean, wishful thinking, if you're assuming that it's not going to come true, if that's your definition, I mean, words just aren't really very clear sometimes on describing things because what I think of as wishful thinking, what you think of as wishful thinking might be different. But I think it's good to have wishes when if you use the term in the sense that wishful thinking means, oh, that'll never happen. That's just wishful thinking. And I do think people sometimes use that term that way. So yeah, I guess you could think of it that way, but I don't believe there is such a thing. I believe anything is possible. I mean, literally anything. Some of the stories that I hear, it's like, wow. And we tend to go, oh, how could that happen? But one of the things we tend to do in some of my possibility posses will go, well, duh. When something happens really exciting, like, well, yeah, why weren't you expecting that? Why are you so surprised? This of course is going to happen because that's the way the world works.
And are you able to share a couple of those stories that you've heard that you?
Oh my goodness, they go on and on. Name a topic. I mean, I've heard a lot of lottery winners for sure. I've heard people that have just been given cars. I've heard about relationships being healed. Literally any kind, like today, I shared this on my blog because someone had sent this to me this morning. And they had manifested a trip to France to an area that they wanted to go to. While they were there, they were thinking, oh, I'd really like to come back next year at this time and I'd like to find a house sitting situation. People sometimes have their houses open for people. And so this gal that wrote me this email, she was with a hiking group. And because she speaks better French than her friend, who was at that time house sitting, she went up and talked to a woman in French, and the woman immediately switched to English. Oh my goodness, you're a house sitter. I'm looking for someone to house sit for next year at this time. So, you know, that was just one I heard today. Yeah, a lot of travel, things that I've heard, cars, money. But honestly, the ones that I like the best really are where relationships get healed and where people find they're connected and they realize that there is so much abundance in the world, and not abundance as in money or lottery wins, but as in beauty. There's so much beauty in the world and it's here all the time. And yet we walk by it and don't notice. So that to me is the real miraculous way when our way of looking at the world is just completely different. We're taught scarcity and limitations, but that's not the way of the world. There is no scarcity. I mean, you just walk out into your yard and look in a square foot of grass. I mean, there's countless pieces of grass. The trees have all these leaves on them. Abundance is the truth. And because we're taught this other thing that there's not enough to go around, that we have to work really hard to get the biddies. Once we believe that, once we put that in, that everything that doesn't fit that is filtered out and doesn't go into our consciousness. This story of limitation and scarcity is what our RAS, since you brought up that, I don't know that I talk about that much, but I did mention that in E squared. But that is what it will let through to our awareness, because we have to admit we are only aware of just a small finite amount of what's going on out there. So it's really a matter of changing the lens, changing what we're going to see in that very small part of consciousness that we have available, that we all of it's available, but what we actually click on, so to speak. If you click on a certain thing, to use a computer analogy, then that website opens. So if we click on scarcity, then that website's going to open. If we click on anything could happen, that will open. So we have a lot of choice in this, but a lot of people again don't think they do. They feel like life happens to me. I'm a victim of this world I see. When you realize that you're not a victim, that's when so many things start changing.
And would you compare it to sort of like an algorithm as we see in social media, where you're seeing what you, for lack of a better word, want to see rather than...
Yeah, it's exactly like an algorithm. I've written about that before too, that we literally choose what algorithm, is going to show up in our life. So it's very much like that.
What do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of manifestation?
Well, that you have to work really hard to manifest things. I think, again, that's part of our paradigm that you have to work so hard for everything. I much prefer smooth and easy, and that's how I have lived my life, with everything being smooth and easy. Certainly, I've had challenges, and challenges are fun. It's like playing a game. You want a little bit of a challenge, but you don't have to make it difficult. You only can make it difficult in your mind by believing how hard it is. And so I think the biggest manifestation is that you really have to work hard, put your nose to the grindstone. I think that's the biggest. The universe has an abundance that it wants to give to us, that it is our divine right, is our inheritance, but because we block it. So really, I would say that one of the biggest misconceptions, I don't know that I've thought about this, but I would say it probably is that you do need to work really, really hard, or even that isn't what the universe wants. I mean, we're here, we're given this gift of life. I mean, right there, you won the lottery, right? I mean, you have the opportunity of a life. And so what you do with it then, I mean, because, that's a pretty cool thing to have. And then we get to choose what we do with that life, that gift that we were given.
Yeah, and they say that you have a better chance of literally winning the lottery millions of times over than being born into your very body.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most powerful and effective technique to manifest your dream life or to be successful author or whatever you want to do? What is the most powerful technique that you would say?
Well, again, being grateful for everything you have. For me as a writer, I just was willing to believe that could be possible, really, because you're told that it's difficult to write a best-selling book, or you're told, again, goes back to that, it's really hard. Um, but I believed that I could. Maybe you might call it naivety. Society might call it naivety, but I believed I could do that. I was willing to try that. A lot of people want to do that, but they don't really do it. So a lot of it's just being a writer is just getting up and writing every day. And I appeal to the muses, what I call the muses. You could also call it the universe, God, whatever. But I want to be connected. I want to share in my writing what the bigger thing wants people to know, not what I might know, but what. So I asked to kind of be a channel, the air traffic controller that brings in the good stuff. So I don't know if that was your specific question, but believing that you can, and then it takes a little bit of discipline to show up every day, but it's so fun. I mean, it's like, what else would I rather be doing? So it's a real gift. I feel like, to be able to do that.
You mentioned earlier that you wrote something in the sand and then it got washed away, but so you believe in writing as an effective way of manifesting what you want as well?
I've done affirmations in my life. Some people really like doing affirmations. There's about 100 gazillion tools that people talk about with manifestation. I guess when you think you need to manifest something, you're already starting out a little bit behind, because the truth is you already have everything you could possibly need. And so it's just really about opening to a different awareness, because it's all right there. It's like, what are you clicking on? We talked about the computer thing, or what is in your algorithm. That's what you can change. So, yeah, you can write affirmations, and that might, you know, bring some things that I've certainly done affirmations. I mean, the thing with the in the sand, that was just a fun little thing that I did. And I have over the years done affirmations from time to time, not so much anymore. But, like right now, I have sort of four main intentions that I sort of got from the Course in Miracles. And it was peace of mind. I feel like that's what I really want, is peace of mind. Surety of purpose, meaning, I want to think that my life's, got purpose. Clear, unmistakable guidance. I like the idea of being guided. And then the fourth one was unceasing joy. And that one seems a little more far-fetched, even to me. It's like unceasing joy. But that is what the Course in Miracles promises. And that is what I trust in and believe in, and know that anything that doesn't look that way is my own block or my own thing that I need to get out of my own way, a belief or thought like, oh, this shouldn't be happening, or whatever it might be that might be blocking my joy. That's on me. It's not on the universe.
You did write the Course in Miracles experiment, and some people listening and watching are already familiar, but a lot of people are not yet. So my understanding, I've read parts of it, and it seems like more of a spiritual take on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but with the experiments, how does that differ from the other books, or how are they similar? What experiments are in there that can really help elevate somebody?
Well, that was a matter of my publisher wanting to call it that. It's like that whole branding thing, the experiment. I had 2 books with experiments, and Think and Grow Rich even had like a big giant experiment about gratitude. But so they just kind of wanted to put that in there. The original title of that book was Course in Miracles for Badasses, or Course in Miracles, the fun version. But that's just what they wanted to call it. And while the author usually gets the last, we just couldn't, settle on this. They thought badasses that it wouldn't translate, because my books tend to get translated in other languages. And they thought, well, people in other countries won't understand that. How do you? So anyway, that's why it's called experiment. So it's not necessarily experiments in Course in Miracles. What it is, the Course in Miracles is divided into 3 sections. There's the text that kind of explains how this works. Then there's a workbook, which has 365 lessons and things you do every day. Like I mentioned that a couple of days ago, it was heaven is a decision I must make. So you have a little, I don't know, you could call it an affirmation or just a little lesson that you're thinking about each day. So what I did, and I didn't set out to write this book so much as I was just blogging about, I go through the Course in Miracles, the lessons every year. There's 365. I start January 1st with number 1. And so in 2018, I guess it was, I just hey, it's January 1st. Here's my lesson, whatever. I was just, blogging about this. And I got so many emails from people, texts, phone calls. You need to turn this into a book. I mean, talk about signs. I mean, it's like when you hear something 300, 400, 500 times, like, oh, okay, maybe I should turn this into a book. So that's basically how it happened. But it's just, the 365 lessons, but it's written in a little more lighthearted. Again, I wanted to call it the fun version, a lighthearted take on it. And the thing about Course in Miracles, it is so dense. I mean, people use it as a book stop. The joke I always say is that how many people, you go to a spiritual gathering, how many people have this book? Everybody raised their hand, but then you go and ask this follow-up question, how many people have read this? And maybe 1 or 2 people. I mean, it's just so much. And in fact, you don't need all the words. Again, words are just, fingers pointing at the moon, but nonetheless, there's a lot of words in there. But so I just kind of lightened it up and made it fun and kind of explained it in Pam Grout lingo, and people just resonated with it. So that's how it turned into a book. And again, I like Course in Miracles for Badasses, but again, it turned into Course in Miracles Experiment. So that's the title that's out there.
Well, that's an excellent title too. I mean, absolutely. I love it so much.
Yeah, except it's not really an experiment, other than just, I guess you could call your life a big experiment. Like if you believe this is what happens to you. And if you are open to other possibilities, this is what happens to you. So you could look at it as an experiment in that sense,
Hmm. And do you believe in accidents when it comes to energy or just things in life? Because you're very much into our energy, and I assume spiritual. And do you believe in accidents, or what's your take on that?
Accidents. You mean like, well, I sort of feel like life always works in my favor. So what somebody might call an accident, it depends on what you want to call it, but something happened that sort of pointed you in a different direction, or whatever you need ends up showing up for you. So is that an accident, or is that a divinely orchestrated event that happens in your life? Like I love the stories where, you're out in the woods and suddenly your nose gets runny and you look down and there's an unopened pack of Kleenexes right there. I mean, those are the kind of things I love. Like everybody knows that can't happen. I mean, the kind of stories that people don't believe in. Well, you're not provided for. You have to work for everything. But no, if you really look around, the universe is providing you with everything you need. So call it accident, call it synchronicity, call it what you want. But if you open to that, you find Everything you need is right there for you. Everything.
And do you recommend meditation or anything like that to connect more?
I meditate. It's a way to kind of calm your mind down for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. Anything that can, again, chisel out time, space, room for the divine to get through is a good thing, in my opinion. So, yeah, meditation is a good thing. I wouldn't say I recommend it, or I don't recommend anything. I just want people. I just tell my story, and then people can do what they want with it.
Yes, and people certainly do a lot with it because you are a best-selling author and you've written 20 books. We are here with Pam Grout. She's the author of E Squared, 9 do-it-yourself energy experiments that prove your thoughts create your reality, E Cubed, Thank and Grow Rich, The Course in Miracles Experiment, which sounds fascinating, and so many others. But Pam, where can people find your books and find out more about you?
Well, another one I would mention that Hay House published as well is Art and Soul Reloaded. And that's a really fun one for creative types, people that want help from the bigger thing in their creative pursuit. This idea that we are here to demonstrate the good and the beautiful. And that's what an artist does. So the book Art and Soul Reloaded, I really like that one a lot too, as far as being a creative person and an artist, which is how I see myself more than a business person or more than that's just how I identify. But as far as my books, any bookstore can order them and have them in within a day. Some of them might actually be in stock. You can get them on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, pretty much anywhere books are sold. Most of my books, at least the Hay House books, the last price 6 books, should be available. And a lot of my other books too. Like I said, I've got travel books. Yeah, all kinds of books, and most bookstores carry them. If not carry them, they can order them. Nowadays people don't always stock books, but like within a day they can get whatever book that they want. So yeah, they're available. They're out there.
And your website, we will also put a link to that below if you're watching this on YouTube, or in the show notes if you're listening to this today. What's the best advice you can give to someone that hasn't yet read your books, or maybe they have, but just someone that really wants to achieve their dream? Like you have achieved seems like your dream. You've achieved extraordinary things. You've written so many inspiring books. What is your best advice for someone to achieve their own?
Be grateful. It goes back to just being grateful, opening your mind to beautiful things. As you start being more grateful, you start noticing more things. It's almost like, you've got your toe in the door, and it's just like it starts opening as you start focusing more on things to be grateful for. So I guess that seems to be a theme that I've covered a lot in this interview. And I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do. There's so many tools. I actually always call myself spiritually promiscuous because I've tried a lot of different things. But Course in Miracles has kind of been my mainstay. But I've done tapping and affirm. I mean, over the years I've tried all kinds of different things. Now I'm pretty much at a stage where I so trust that the universe has my back and that good is meant to come to me, that I don't really even ask for specific things so much as just trusting that good will come to me. Good is coming to me. Life is beautiful. So that's kind of my, I don't know, my standard fare, or my, uh, what I expect. So that's what I'm going to get. We get out of life whatever we expect. That's kind of one thing people have hopefully noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you do expect this, are you saying this out loud? I mean, you personally, I know there's all kinds of ways, but are you saying this out loud? I know good things are coming to me, or it's just a realization on the inside?
Well, I've talked about this so many times, but I'll share here in my AA 2.0 program. And again, it's just a takeoff. There's the 12-step AA program, but I'm all about smooth and easy. So this just has 2 steps. And the first one, again, is I get up in the morning and I say something amazingly awesome is going to happen to me today. Eventually, I switched it up, and something, ridiculously relevant is going to happen today, or something, gorgeously glorious or whatever, but something really cool is going to happen to me today. So that's step one. And then step two is I do, document the great things that are happening. That goes back to the gratitude. And I send to my possibility posse each morning something really wonderful that happened from the day before. It might be a miracle. Anyway, so those are, that's a real simple little kind of funny thing I came up with when I was writing Think and Grow Rich, AA 2.0. And again, really easy, just pronounce each morning. So yes, I do kind of pronounce each morning that I'm expecting a beautiful day. And it says in the Course in Miracles, that's your intention. You want to have a beautiful, meaningful day. And if I make no decisions on my own, that's the kind of day I will have, because that's the natural way of the world. But if I make a decision that, oh, no, this is hard, or this shouldn't have happened, then, I might need a restorative and ask the Holy Spirit, which is how it's termed in the Course in Miracles. Hey, help me see this differently. It's all about how we see things. So I choose to see things in the most advantageous way for me. It's just, makes all the difference.
Yeah, and if you are stuck in a negative thing happens and then it spirals and all of a sudden something else is negative and you're in traffic and oh, it's just getting worse and worse and it keeps coming to you. Is there a quick way to snap out of that to change your
Well,
perception?
again, I just say, Holy Spirit, help me see this differently. You stop, and first is recognizing, wow, look what I'm doing here, and recognizing that your thoughts and beliefs are doing this. Your thoughts are saying, this isn't, because being stuck in traffic isn't of itself a bad thing. It's what we think about it being. I mean, everything that happens is a reflection of how we see it. And so something really beautiful for one person might be the worst thing ever for another person. So I ask to see it in the way that's most beneficial for me, because I mean, there's no right and wrong, but it's just about, I want to be happy. I want to be peaceful. I want to recognize the beauty and the glory. So what way of looking at it is the best way? So asking for help for seeing things differently. If I notice that I've gone down a path that I don't want to be on, doubt, fear, whatever it might be.
That makes complete sense. And some people swear by what is termed as the flow state, or, going in the flow of life with, what is your take on that sort of thing?
Well, I talked about frequency, being on a positive frequency. You're definitely more in what is called flow state. Things just kind of work out. Like one time, to one of the possibility posses, this baseball player came in, and he had been in the World Series, and he was talking about how this one particular day when they ended up winning the World Series, he was just so in the flow state, what he called the flow state. And it wasn't even that he had planned it, but it just sort of happened. It's like he could do no wrong. I mean, and again, I think that's kind of how we're all meant to be living. We can't do wrong, but our thoughts and our beliefs start telling us, oh, this shouldn't be this way. I mean, we do such a number on ourselves by doubting ourselves, by believing that it's supposed to be hard. So yeah, I definitely believe there's a flow state. And, that's just, again, some psychologists probably wrote a book about that. But yes, I do think there is what I would call a flow state. Yes.
To go over this one more time, but our energy, the best way to harness the energy and get into this flow state or this positive state of mind, to not have the doubt, is through gratitude. And what would you say?
Well, just gratitude, and start noticing how things are going okay. Like we always say, things are always working out for me. That's what we say in my possibility posse. And one of the people in there wrote this little thing that we put in our wind, so it reflects into the mirror, and it says, things are always working out for me. And once you believe that, and once you realize how much you are loved by the universe, how much it's meant to work out, how much is, again, your divine inheritance is to have a life of ease and beauty and love. That is what we all are, meant to have. We can choose to see other things, but that's not how it was planned by the universe.
Yeah. And with divine inheritance, would you say that we are all connected to the divine. What is the divine to you?
Life, animating force of life. It's just always dynamism. That's life. You can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it whatever you want, but there is this love energy, call it that, this beauty in the world that is what we're here for.
I love it. I love it so much. And we are running kind of short on time, but is there anything that you wanted to say today that I don't know enough to ask, or that you just want to say today about anything that we've covered? Because this is so...
No, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to have these kind of conversations. I would encourage people to, get your own little possibility posse, get together and talk with people about all the incredible things that are happening. There's plenty of groups formed to address things that they don't like, but let's talk about all the things that are going right, all the beautiful things. And if that's what you're focusing on, that's what you're going to see. You get more of whatever you put your attention upon. You get whatever you put your focus on. That is the way the world works. So it's such a simple thing. And that's another human characteristic. We try to make everything so difficult. We need 18 steps, to do this or do that. And it doesn't have to be that way. It can be simple. If we just stop and just interact with the universe, say, hey, that's like the dude abides. Are you out there? Do you have my back? If that's the case, give me a sign. You got 48 hours, show up. That's the first experiment. And it's real simple. You can write it down, and then just, because you're paying attention. A lot of times we ask for something, and then, 10 of them might dance around us, but we're not paying attention. So I think with the 48 hours, it gives us a little time frame. It's like, okay, 48 hours, I'm going to be looking for this. So I think, having those parameters is what might have made people notice in a way that maybe they hadn't in the past.
In the Dude Abides experiment with the 48 hours, I've read that, but for people that have not, can you give a brief description of what that is?
That's the first experiment in E², and it's just that there is this force out there that you can interact with and that has your back. Basically, that's not quite how I said it, but that's the whole idea behind it, that yes, there is something outside of you that you that wants to bless you and guide you, and that you animate into your life. So first of all, and once once you realize there's this force that has your back, that changes everything. And then, from there it goes on to ask for specific things, or to just show how your energy works, like those divining rods. I call them the Albert Einstein ones in the book, but I think, or Albie Einstein, it's just about energy, showing how we are, moving fields of energy. But anyway, that I think the guy Ashley called them divining rods. So yeah.
Again, we will put a link to that book and all your books in the description of this if you're watching this on YouTube, or in the show notes if you're listening to this today. But Pam Grout, is there anything else? Thank you so much, first of all, for being here. You're so inspiring. Your wealth of knowledge. I have questions that could go on for a few more hours, but I know we are short on time. So is there anything else that you want to say today before we sign off?
No, just keep the conversation going. That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I greatly, greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Before I won, I had this burning desire. Like, it felt like if I didn't go get these tickets, it was going to be the end of the world. I sit down and I'm looking at the ticket and I'm looking at my phone. I jump up and I go, babe, am I tripping, or do these numbers match? I think we just won over $300,000. And he was like, no. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm serious. But that night we put it in a little tin can, and we went to that tin can like 100 times. It was still a whirlwind, and that amount of money is life-changing.
Do you believe that you manifested this win?
1,000,000% believe that it is. You literally can manifest anything into your life.